Friends, in today's video we bring you a heart-touching and shocking story. A billionaire's daughter lies in a coma. Doctors say there's no hope. But suddenly, a poor homeless boy storms into the hospital room and shouts, "Turn off the machines, and she will wake up!" What happens next will leave you in tears. It's a story of truth, betrayal, and the miracle of faith. So stay with us till the end of this video, because the ending will shock you. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. New York Presbyterian felt like a city inside a city. Elevators whispering up glass shafts, monitors breathing in steady beeps, nurses rolling carts past walls washed in soft blues. On the 12th floor, in a private corner suite that looked out over the Hudson, billionaire Richard Wallace sat beside his daughter's bed and counted the seconds between the sounds that said she was still here. Beep, pause, beep. Emily's fingers were small under his palm, cool and slack, the same fingers that used to tug his tie and ask if board meeting meant bored people. Richard was the kind of man investors called at 3 a.m. because he always picked up. He had a job built for television interviews and a voice that could move markets 2 points in an afternoon. None of that mattered under the fluorescent halo of his daughter's room. Here he looked smaller in his navy suit, the fabric wrinkled at the elbows from sleeping in the chair, a paper cup of burned coffee untouched on the ledge. The room carried the clean scent of antiseptic and something sweeter, vanilla lotion the nurses rubbed onto Emily's wrists to prevent skin breakdown. "Pumpkins get vanilla," one nurse had joked the first week. Emily hadn't laughed. She hadn't laughed in 34 days. Dr. Raymond Carter, Ray to friends, chief of pediatric hematology to the press, had arranged everything. He was the one who'd pushed the bed closer to the window so Emily could feel the weather. He calibrated the ventilator settings himself some mornings and insisted the hospital's top nutritionist build Emily's feed bag from scratch. He was also Richard's college friend, the guy from freshman year who'd carried a trumpet to football games and swore jazz would teach him medicine because it taught him to listen. "We need patience," he said now whenever Richard's questions turned into demands. "Time is part of the therapy." Patience was not a currency Richard possessed. He had it printed into statements and quarterly guidance. He did not have it where it counted. "She liked the carousel in Bryant Park," he told Emily when the room got too loud with its quiet. "We'll go when you wake up. Hot chocolate with those jumbo marshmallows." He tried to laugh, but the sound thinned and collapsed on itself. Vanessa stood by the flowers, white lilies arriving daily from people who signed their names with brands, and arranged them the way she arranged everything, immaculate, symmetrical, measured. Her dress was dove gray, her nails the pale pink of porcelain. She placed the get well cards into a neat fan, swept a water ring from the sill with a tissue, then flinched when the 4-pump chirped to announce the end of a bag. "Ray," she called, the tone light, helpful. "It's singing again." "On it." Carter moved through the door with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He silenced the pump, checked the tubing, scribbled neat notes onto a clipboard, and squeezed Richard's shoulder. "Numbers are stable. Let's keep doing exactly what we're doing." Exactly what we're doing meant machines, a ventilator that rose and fell like a second set of lungs, a bank of monitors tracing heart, oxygen, blood pressure, a central line taped beneath gauze that fed medications and nutrition with the indifference of clocks. Exactly what we're doing meant Richard's days trimmed to a ritual of reading and humming and telling the same stories on repeat so the sound of his voice might build a bridge to wherever Emily was. He had just started Peter Pan, Emily's copy with the sequined cover she swore made it a little bit magic, when the door crashed open. The noise was not hospital noise. It was street noise, steel against steel. A boy stood there, framed by the threshold like a torn photograph pasted onto a glossy page. He was thin in the way that made you think of winter, sharp elbows, wrists like pencils, a t-shirt long past the idea of clean layered under an army surplus jacket 2 sizes too small. City grime webbed the laces of his sneakers. His hair stuck out in directions wind had chosen for him. "Turn them off!" he shouted, voice high, breathless. "Turn the machines off, now, and she'll wake up. She'll get up." Richard didn't stand at first. The world tilted. The boy remained, steady as an accusation. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. Security. She snapped to no one and everyone, eyes flicking to the call button. Get security up here right now. Dr. Carter stepped forward, physician's calm drawn over his face like a fresh pair of gloves. Son, you can't be in here, he said, not unkind but with the kind of firmness that holds up buildings. This is an ICU. Let's step outside. The boy didn't move. His eyes, startlingly clear, the color of wet stone, locked on the ventilator, then on Emily's face, then on Richard. If you keep her plugged in, you'll lose her, he said, the words landing with a certainty that made the machine seem suddenly too loud. You have to trust me. Shut them down. Richard rose, the chair pushing back with a rubbery squeal. He had heard everything: experimental trials, clinical probabilities, long-shot miracles. Never this. What did you just say? His voice came out rough and used to pleading. How do you know her? The boy swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing like a stitch. She's my friend, he said simply, as if that explained everything. She told me about Bryant Park. The carousel with the rabbit. She hates the horse with the chipped ear. Richard's heart kicked hard against his ribs. The rabbit with the glass eye that stuck, a detail tucked in the small drawer where he kept things only Emily knew. He glanced at Vanessa, who shook her head minutely, lips pressed into a line, at Carter, whose gaze didn't flicker. Enough, Vanessa said, finding steel. You are trespassing. You are filthy. You could make her sick. Her voice sharpened. Get out. Footsteps thundered the hall. 2 security officers filled the doorway, navy uniforms and heavy belts. Let's go, kid, the taller one said, already reaching. The boy stepped in front of the ventilator, as if his small body could dam a river. Please, he said to Richard, not to the guards, not to the doctor, not to the woman with the perfect nails. They're lying to you. Those machines aren't saving her anymore. His eyes flicked, just for an instant, toward the 4-pump Dr. Carter had adjusted moments ago. They're taking her away. The guards took his arms. He struggled, not wild, not violent, but with a desperation that made the room shrink around the edges. Mr. Wallace, listen to me, he cried, heels scraping tile, jacket riding up to reveal a bruise the color of old plums along his rib. Turn them off. Do it now or you'll be too late. Stop, Richard said, but the word arrived empty, a command without a target. The boy's sneakers squealed, then lifted as the guards hauled him backward, his voice echoing down the corridor. Don't let them fool you! Don't let. The door swung closed on the rest. Silence pressed in, thick as felt. The ventilator sighed. Somewhere down the hall, an alarm chirped and then was hushed. Richard stared at his reflection in the black window. His face ghosted over the skyline, and heard the boy's words repeat until they became a rhythm. They're lying. They're taking her away. Dr. Carter cleared his throat. Richard, I'm sorry about that, he said gently. We'll review how he got past the nurse's station. Kids from the streets wander in sometimes. He placed the clipboard at the foot of the bed with surgical precision. Emily needs stability. Let's not agitate her. Vanessa moved closer to Richard, sliding her arm through his like an anchor. He's a child, darling. Probably not well. Don't do this to yourself. Her perfume was soft and expensive. It smelled like evenings without hospitals. You need rest. Let me get ready to order you something to help you sleep. Richard turned back to Emily. A loose strand of hair had fallen across her forehead. He smoothed it to the side with his thumb and felt the slight oil of the lotion the nurses used. He tried to imagine air moving without the ventilator's rise and fall. He tried to imagine making a choice every doctor had promised would be fatal. He tried to imagine believing a boy who had arrived like a storm and knew about a chipped ear on a painted horse. Out in the hall, an elevator chimed. Voices came and went, the hospital's tide. Inside the room, time held its breath. Richard leaned over his daughter and, for the first time since she'd closed her eyes, whispered a question instead of a promise. he said, close enough that his stubble brushed her temple. "If you can hear me, tell me what to do." No answer came, only the steady bleat of a heart that would not quit and the soft hiss of air that was not her own. And somewhere, beyond the door and the flowers and the expert hands, a pair of thin sneakers slapped tile in a run that hadn't finished what it came to start. Weeks earlier, before the beeping machines and the 12-floor view of the Hudson, Emily still lived at the Wallace estate in Westchester, a spread of clipped lawns, maples that combed the sky, and a slate path that curled toward a glass-walled sunroom where her bed had been moved. "For the light," Richard called it, bringing the outside in. Emily, pale but alert, called it "almost outside," then pressed her cheek to the cool glass and watched the wind write in the trees. The house had rhythms money tends to buy, a chef who left bone broth simmering, a driver who idled the SUV near the porte-cochere, a housekeeper, Mrs. Garrett, who kept everything smelling faintly of lemon oil. Vanessa curated those rhythms the way a gallery owner curates a show. She never raised her voice, she raised an eyebrow. Her presence was tidy, tasteful, inevitable. When she swept into the sunroom with a tray, grapes sliced in quarters, a wedge of flourless chocolate cake, a glass of fresh-pressed juice, she smiled as if the room were a camera. "Something sweet for our sweetest girl," she trilled, setting the tray on the rolling table. Emily tried to smile back, but her eyes kept drifting to the yard, to the old maple near the fence where squirrels played chase. "Dad says when I'm stronger, we'll go to Bryant Park," she murmured. "The carousel with the rabbit that has the crooked ear." "Of course," Vanessa said, arranging the napkin into a perfect triangle. "When you're stronger." The words were warm. The look she shot the four-pole was not. That afternoon, a scuffed soccer ball rolled out of whatever world exists beyond gates and landed on the Wallace lawn. Emily saw it first, a tired, sun-faded ball that stopped against the maple's exposed root. Seconds later, a boy appeared in the branches, thin, quick, a shadow stitched from the city. He balanced on the lowest limb like he'd been born learning where to put his feet, then dropped to the grass, scooped the ball into both hands, and looked up. They saw each other. Emily inside, with the sun on her face. The boy outside, with grass stains on his knees. He flinched, ready to bolt. She lifted a hand and tapped the glass, once, twice, then pointed toward the service gate. "Use the gate," she mouthed slow. "It's safer." He stared a beat longer, then drifted toward the gate in a wary half-circle and slipped out to the sidewalk. A minute later he reappeared by the sunroom door, as if summoned. He didn't come in. He hovered in the threshold with the ball hugged to his chest. Up close he looked about 12, maybe 13, with hair that couldn't decide which way to lie and a jacket 2 sizes too small. The city had left its handwriting on him, grime in the lines of his hands, a bruise under one rib like a storm cloud that never moved. "Hi," he said, voice barely above the hum of the air vents. "I'm not here to steal. I just kicked it too hard." "What's your name?" Emily asked. "Noah," he said after a second. "Noah Reed." "I'm Emily," she said, as if they were meeting at a park instead of through a $1 million door. She nodded toward the tray. "Do you want this?" "I'm not hungry." He lifted his hands, embarrassed. "I can't." His stomach answered with a hollow complaint that seemed to echo off the glass. He looked at his shoes. "I mean, thank you." "Take it," she said, nudging the table with her elbow. "Mrs. Garrett will make more if I ask." He ate the way hungry kids eat when they finally stop pretending they're not, fast, grateful, expressionless until the first real taste lands. After 3 bites, he looked up and grinned in a way that reset the room's gravity. "This is wow." They talked the way kids do across borders adults think are permanent. Noah told her about a shelter in Mott Haven that closed at 7 sharp, about the library branch that let him stay until the lights blinked, about a basketball court with 1 rim and no net where the older kids didn't mind if he shot in the corner. Emily told him about the carousel rabbit's glass eye that stuck, about the summers she fed a chipmunk walnuts until it took one from her palm, about how the hospital smell stayed in your nose even hours after you came home. Footsteps thudded. Mrs. Garrett's keys chimed like a warning bell. Emily's eyes widened. Under the bed, she whispered. Quick! Noah slid under just as the door swung in. Mrs. Garrett scanned the sunroom, then the tray. Well, look at that, she said, pleased. Appetite's back. Emily mustered a smile. A little. When the house quieted, Noah rolled out, brushed dust from his sleeve, and stood. I should go, he said. But can I come back? Just to talk? Tomorrow, Emily said, without checking with anyone. Use the gate. The next days arranged themselves around their secret. When Richard left for the city and Vanessa drifted to whatever appointment made her heels click down the hall, Noah would slip through the service gate, tap the sunroom door, and appear like a promise kept. They played Uno on the rolling table. They told each other stories and made up cities with better weather. On days Emily felt strong enough, Noah drew chalk targets on the flagstone outside the sunroom, and she tossed the scuffed ball from her pillow, laughing when it thunked the bullseye. When she didn't, he sat cross-legged on the rug and read Peter Pan in a too serious voice until she giggled at the wrong parts. Richard noticed the giggles, not the boy. He noticed that when he read to Emily at night, she tracked the words with her eyes rather than that far-off stare. He let himself believe the turn was treatment. He kissed her forehead and told her she was getting better, because fathers need sentences with verbs that move in the right direction. Vanessa noticed the crumbs. The chalk marks. The window she was sure she had latched standing a thumb's width open. She called a security company and, by dinner, men in polos were stringing a low, clean line of wire along the fence. A deterrent, the foreman assured her. Not lethal. Richard frowned. Feels like overkill. It feels like love, Vanessa said, hand on his chest. Protecting what's ours. That night, after Richard fell asleep in his study, Vanessa poured 2 fingers of bourbon into a crystal glass and walked to the edge of the lawn. A car idled at the curb. Dr. Raymond Carter sat behind the wheel, sleeves rolled, collar open, looking more like a man in a magazine than a man who had been on rounds since dawn. Vanessa slid into the passenger seat and closed the door with a hush that sounded like secrecy. It's done, she said, eyes glowing in the dash light. Perimeter secured. No more strays. Raymond smiled, a thin, contained thing. Good. We can't afford surprises. He tapped the syringe cap in his pocket with his finger, an unconscious pat. How's our patient? More compliant by the day, Vanessa said, the words caressed, not spoken. I followed your schedule. Morning dose in her juice, evening through the line. She sleeps like the dead. He checked the rear view out of habit. And Richard? Exhausted, suggestible, exactly where we want him. Her voice cooled to a plane of glass. You said the next escalation would tip her into coma. If she's on life support, you're the hero who keeps her stable. I nudge Richard to sign what needs signing. She reached into her tote and produced a folder, authorizations, transfer forms, proxies written in legalese and inevitability. He won't read them properly. He never does when he's crying. Raymond took the folder and exhaled like a man who could already taste the future. You get the shares, I get the foundation, the press, the speaking circuit. Tragedy turned triumph. He looked sideways, studied Vanessa's perfect profile. No loose ends. None, she said, and kissed him like a vow. Neither of them saw the shape in the maple, the small, wire-tense boy flat along a branch, breath held past comfort, eyes wide enough to drink the scene whole. Noah hadn't been able to sleep since the fence went up. He needed to know how to find his way back to Emily. He found something else. He watched Vanessa slip from the car, watched the taillights smear red and vanish. He stayed on the branch until the bark bit his palms and his own heartbeat slowed from siren to thrum. Then he climbed down, hit the sidewalk, and ran. The next morning, Emily didn't answer when Mrs. Garrett asked about breakfast. Her lids were heavy, her voice slower, like a record at the wrong speed. Vanessa floated in with a pill cup and water, and a smile. Doctor's orders, sweetheart. Emily's throat clicked. I don't want it. You want to get well, don't you? The smile sharpened. Open. Emily opened. She always had. Minutes later, sleep pulled her like a riptide. When Richard came to kiss her goodbye, he thought her stillness was rest. He didn't notice the way the monitor showed curves a fraction lower than yesterday's curves, or the way Vanessa's hands were steady in a way that didn't match her soothing voice. By evening, the escalation Raymond promised arrived like a thief. Emily's breath thinned. Her skin cooled. Vanessa pressed the code on her phone and the driver eased the SUV to the door. Richard, frantic, rode beside his daughter in the ambulance while Raymond took point at New York Presbyterian, admitting Emily under his own service, speaking fluent hospital while Richard drowned in syllables. Ventilator. Central line. Sedation. Noah reached the estate gate as the ambulance's lights smeared blue across the hedges. He pounded until his hands stung. "Open! Please!" His voice broke in the spaces between the words. No one came. He sprinted to the maple, climbed, vaulted the new wire with a luck that made his legs shake when he landed, and pressed his face to the dark sunroom glass. Empty. The Uno deck still fanned across the rolling table like a party interrupted. The scuffed ball waited by the door. He didn't go to the shelter that night. He went to the bus stop. The bench was metal and the map cracked, but the route numbers were the kind he knew how to read: downtown, crosstown, Hospital Row, where buildings glowed white, and no one told you to move along if you kept your head down. He rode until the stops started sounding like places where people live when lives go sideways. He got off at 168th, followed the smell of hand sanitizer and cafeteria coffee, and stared up at the letters cut into the hospital stone. Inside, he watched long enough to learn the way security looked through you if you pushed a mop, the way linen carts could hide a kid if he crouched just right, the way nurses typed without looking up. He watched until he saw Vanessa and Dr. Carter cross the lobby together, until he saw the way their bodies made a pair. He followed the pair and heard enough, names, numbers, the word, escalate, to make the world tilt the way it had on the maple branch. When he finally found the right elevator and the right corridor and the right door, he didn't knock. He crashed through it, and shouted the only truth his chest could carry. "Turn them off. Now. She'll wake up. She'll stand." Security threw him out. Concrete kissed his palms. The revolving door swallowed his reflection. And still the words gnawed like hunger. "They're not saving her. They're taking her away." On the sidewalk, he stared up at the lit squares of the 12th floor, and made a decision that felt too big for a boy and exactly the right size for a friend. He picked up a smooth palm-sized rock from the hospital planter, felt its cool weight, and whispered to no one, "Hold on, Em. I'm coming back the way the city taught me." Then he backed up 3 steps, ran at the wall like it was a fence he'd already learned, and started to climb. Rain had just started to slick the glass walls of New York Presbyterian when Richard Wallace returned from a sleepless night in the hospital lounge. His tie hung loose around his neck, his hair uncombed, his face hollowed by shadows. Emily's room glowed in a soft amber wash, machines whispering in rhythm, the 4-line dripping steady as a metronome. She looked more fragile than ever, her lips pale, her lashes trembling against her cheeks like they fought to stay closed. Richard pulled the chair close again, his body aching but refusing to leave her side. He didn't trust rest anymore. He couldn't. Every time he blinked, he saw that boy's eyes, dark, clear, burning with a certainty that no doctor's chart could hold. "Turn them off, she'll wake up." The words refused to leave. Vanessa entered silently, a silk scarf framing her perfect hair. She held a tray, tea, 2 slices of buttered toast, pills in a cup balanced as naturally as cream and sugar. "Darling, you must eat," she urged, voice smooth, practiced. "Emily needs you strong." Richard looked at the pills, his stomach turning. "What are these?" "Just vitamins," Vanessa lied effortlessly. "Dr. Carter insists." She placed them in his palm with the care of someone delivering communion, then leaned down to kiss his temple. "You've carried too much. Let us carry you for a while." Her touch felt cold, rehearsed. He glanced from her to the machines and then to Emily, whose small chest rose and fell with the rhythm of something both miraculous and mechanical. For the first time, doubt hissed louder than grief. Outside, in the wet shadows of the ambulance bay, Noah crouched under a dripping overhang, soaked to the bone. His jacket clung like a second skin, his sneakers squished with every step, but his eyes never left the third-floor windows where Emily's light glowed. He had followed the orderlies, learned their shifts, watched the patterns of security guards. His stomach howled from 2 days without food, but fear kept him sharp. "They're going to kill her," he told himself, pressing the rock he'd pocketed tighter into his fist. "If I don't stop them, no one will." Through the window, he caught a glimpse of Dr. Carter adjusting Emily's foreline again, sliding a clear syringe into the port with casual precision. Vanessa stood close, her hand brushing his arm. Their eyes met in a look Noah recognized from alleys where men passed secrets. It was the look of people who thought no one was watching. Noah's heart hammered so hard he thought the glass might rattle. He ducked lower, drenched and trembling, whispering Emily's name as if it could travel through the rain. "Hold on, Em. Just hold on." Inside, Richard finally broke the silence that had coiled tight since the boy's intrusion. He turned to Dr. Carter, who was recording vitals with the neatness of a banker. "Ray," Richard said, voice thick. "How did that boy know my daughter's name?" He knew about the carousel. About the rabbit. Dr. Carter didn't look up. "Medical records aren't locked in vaults, Richard. A file, a chart, a careless nurse, street kids are sharp. He probably overheard a name, spun it into a performance. Don't let him poison your mind." He wrote another line, his pen steady, his words steady, everything steady except for the flicker of calculation behind his eyes. Richard rubbed his temples. But the way he spoke, like he was certain. That certainty was madness, Carter said, his tone sharper now. He was filthy, unstable. "You're exhausted and grieving. Don't mistake delirium for prophecy." Vanessa slipped her hand into Richard's again, squeezing. "Listen to Ray. He's saved countless children. He'll save Emily. Don't let a gutter boy destroy what little hope you have left." Richard sagged in his chair, but the words didn't settle. They circled, restless, scratching the inside of his skull. Hours later, when the hospital quieted into the midnight lull, Noah made his move. He scaled the loading dock service pipes the way he once scaled fire escapes to sleep on rooftops. Rain slicked the metal, cut his palms, tore his nails, but he climbed anyway. Each floor passed with the scrape of rubber soles and pounding breath until he reached the level he remembered, room 312, Emily's room. He pressed his face to the glass, rain streaking across his cheeks, and saw her again. Pale. Still. Machines tethered to every limb. And beside her, Vanessa pouring something from a small vial into a paper cup while Carter checked the monitors. Noah's chest seized. It's true. They're poisoning her. He tapped the glass once. Then harder. Either of them looked up. Desperation flared. He lifted the rock, his hand trembling. One throw, and the world inside would hear him. One throw, and the lie would shatter. He pulled back his arm. And stopped. Emily's eyes fluttered, just barely, as if fighting the weight of the world. She didn't wake, but her lips moved around a whisper no one else seemed to notice. Noah pressed his ear to the glass, breath fogging the pain. "Help me!" The word was faint, but it was there. Noah's throat burned. He steadied the rock again, heart hammering like thunder. This is it. Now or never. And inside, Richard Wallace, billionaire, negotiator, father, lifted his head at the same moment, sensing something, a tremor not in the machines but in the air itself, as if his daughter's soul was calling to him. The storm outside deepened. And the boy threw. The sound of shattering glass exploded through the sterile quiet of the third floor. Tiny shards rained onto the hospital floor like icy raindrops, scattering across the polished tile. For a second, the machine's rhythmic beeps seemed to falter under the weight of that intrusion. Richard Wallace jerked upright in his chair, his head whipping toward the window. Vanessa screamed, clutching her chest in theatrical panic. Dr. Carter dropped his clipboard, his mask of control cracking for a split second before he barked. "Security! Through the jagged opening stepped Noah, soaked from the storm, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes blazing with a mix of fear and conviction far too old for his thin frame. He was breathing hard, clutching the frame as though the climb had cost him every shred of strength he had left. Yet his voice was strong, unyielding. "Stop them! Don't let them touch her again! Those machines, they're killing her!" The room froze. Emily's chest rose and fell under the steady hiss of the ventilator, her face pale, her small body a battlefield between wires and will. Richard's heart slammed against his ribs. The boy's words echoed the ones that had been gnawing at him for days. Vanessa recovered first, her face contorted with outrage. "How dare you!" she hissed, her voice cutting like glass. "This filthy child again? He's insane! Richard, call them off! He's a danger to Emily!" Noah shook his head violently, stepping closer to the bed, one arm stretched out protectively. His voice cracked with raw desperation. "I'm not a danger. I'm her friend. She told me things only she would know. You're hurting her, not me." He pointed at the foreline, at the steady drip that slid into Emily's veins. "That's not medicine, it's poison." Carter's eyes narrowed, his composure folding into irritation. "This is absurd. Richard, don't let this child manipulate you. These are critical treatments. Without them, your daughter will die." But Richard's gaze lingered on Noah, then drifted to Emily. Her fingers twitched, just slightly, almost imperceptibly. Was it a coincidence? Or was she trying to reach out? "Dad!" The whisper was faint, but Richard heard it. He leaned forward sharply, gripping Emily's hand. "Emily? Sweetheart? Did you say something?" Her lips moved again, forming words without sound. Her eyelids fluttered. Noah leaned forward, his voice trembling but certain. "She's fighting, Mr. Wallace. You have to believe her. Believe me. If you keep her on those machines, she'll never wake up." For a long, suspended moment, Richard's world split in two. On one side, the polished authority of Carter, the rehearsed assurance of Vanessa, the safety net of medical science. On the other, the raw, unshakable conviction of a boy who had nothing, no status, no power, no reason to lie. And in the middle, Emily, his daughter, her lips quivering around a truth too fragile to carry alone. "Richard!" Vanessa's voice cracked like a whip. "End this nonsense! Security will be here any second. Tell this rat to get out!" But Richard didn't move. He tightened his grip on Emily's hand and looked at Noah, his voice breaking. If I listen to you, and you're wrong." His throat burned. "She'll die." Noah stepped closer, his wet sneakers squeaking against the floor. His eyes glistened with tears that cut clean tracks through the dirt on his face. "She'll die if you don't. I swear to you, I'd never risk her if I didn't know. Please, Mr. Wallace. Please. Trust me, not them." The door banged open. Security guards rushed in, the same ones who had dragged Noah out before. Their hands went to his arms, ready to rip him away again. But this time Richard's voice thundered, shattering the room like the glass had minutes earlier. "Stop!" The guards froze. Richard's chest heaved as he rose from his chair, every inch of his frame shaking. His voice was raw, torn from somewhere deep. "No one touches him. Not this time. Not while he's standing by my daughter's bed." The guards hesitated, then stepped back uncertain. Vanessa's mouth dropped open in disbelief. "Richard, you can't be serious." But Richard wasn't looking at her. His eyes stayed fixed on Noah, then on Emily, whose hand, so small in his, now squeezed, just faintly, but enough. Enough to send tears spilling down Richard's cheeks. And in that moment he knew. The machines hissed. The rain lashed the broken window. And Richard Wallace, billionaire, negotiator, titan of steel and glass, dropped to his knees beside his daughter's bed and whispered, "Tell me what to do, son." Noah's answer was steady, absolute. "Unplug them." The room turned into a storm of human voices. Vanessa shrieked, her manicured hands clawing at Richard's arm. "You've lost your mind! Don't you dare listen to this filthy street rat. If you unplug her, she'll die this very second. Her voice was high, desperate, almost cracking under the weight of panic. Dr. Carter stepped forward, his white coat swaying, eyes cold and commanding. Richard, listen to me. I've been your friend for 20 years. I am the only one who has kept your daughter alive this long. That boy knows nothing about medicine, nothing about science. He's poisoning your mind. If you disconnect her from these machines, Emily's life will end instantly. Do you want that on your conscience? But Richard's hands were trembling with a different kind of knowledge, the trembling of a father who had just felt his daughter's tiny fingers move in his palm. He looked down at Emily, her face ghostly pale under the fluorescent glow, lips twitching as though she wanted to speak but couldn't. For weeks she had been nothing but stillness, silence. Now she was fighting, trying to reach him. Daddy! The sound came out broken, thinner than breath, but unmistakable. Richard's throat closed. His knees buckled until he was almost collapsed against the bed. His tears fell onto her blanket. Sweetheart? Emily, can you hear me? Her lashes fluttered. A faint, barely there squeeze pressed into his hand again. Noah stepped forward, his skinny body shaking but his voice solid like iron. She's telling you. She wants free. Those machines aren't helping her anymore. They're trapping her. He pointed at the 4-line, his fingers shaking. That drip, it's not medicine. I saw them. They're keeping her down on purpose. They want her gone so they can take everything from you. Richard's head snapped up, his eyes locking on to Carter and Vanessa. What is he talking about? His voice was thunder, unsteady but dangerous. Vanessa recoiled, her mask of grace cracking. He's delirious. He's a nobody. You're letting grief drive you insane. But Richard wasn't listening to her anymore. For the first time, he saw them, really saw them. The nervous flicker in Carter's jaw, the way Vanessa's pupils darted, too fast, too calculating. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity, the fatigue that never lifted from Emily, the treatments that never made her stronger, the endless reassurances to just wait, just be patient. No, Richard whispered. His voice rose, his hand tightening around Emily's. No more waiting. No more lies. He turned to the guards who stood frozen in the doorway, caught between orders and uncertainty. Don't let them near my daughter. Do you hear me? No one touches her but me. Vanessa's face twisted in fury. Richard! Think about what you're saying! But he ignored her. With trembling hands, he reached for the 4-line. His pulse hammered, his mind screamed that he was about to kill the only thing in the world that mattered. And yet, beneath all the terror, there was a strange calm, like his soul already knew the truth. Noah stood beside him, eyes wide but steady. Do it, he whispered. Trust her. Trust me. The moment stretched like an eternity. Rain pattered against the broken window, wind breathing through the jagged glass. Every beep of the heart monitor pierced Richard's skull. He thought of the carousel rabbit, the chipped ear, the secret detail only Emily could have told the boy. He thought of her whisper, Daddy. And then, he pulled. The tubing slipped free. The monitor erupted in a long, screaming tone, flat and merciless. Vanessa cried out as though she had been stabbed. Carter lunged forward, fury twisting his features. You fool! You've killed her! But Richard held on, his body shielding his daughter. No, he said through tears, his voice breaking but unyielding. No, I believe in her. For a terrible, endless few seconds, the room was filled only with the shrill wail of the machine, the gasps of panic, the thunder of rain outside. Richard bent over Emily, pressing his forehead to hers, whispering frantically, Come back to me, baby girl. Please, Emily. Please. Then, like the faintest dawn cracking through endless night, Emily's chest rose. Once, shaky and small. Then again, stronger. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes glazed with exhaustion but alive, undeniably alive. Daddy, she whispered, her voice rasping like dry leaves but carrying more power than any machine. Richard broke. He sobbed into her hair, clutching her like he would never let go again. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here." Noah, his skinny shoulders trembling, let out a cry that was half laughter, half sob. Relief poured out of him in waves. The guards stared, mouths hanging open. Even they couldn't deny what they had just seen. Vanessa staggered back, her face frozen in horror. Dr. Carter's mask shattered completely, his expression dark with fury, his entire plan unraveling before his eyes. And Richard Wallace, billionaire, father, broken man reborn, lifted his tear-streaked face toward them and roared with a voice that carried the weight of love, rage, and truth combined. "You tried to murder my daughter!" The silence that followed Richard's roar was deafening. Rain drummed against the broken window, wind pushed the curtains inward, and every person in the room seemed frozen in a portrait of shock. Emily, weak but alive, blinked slowly, her tiny hand clutching at her father's shirt. Richard cradled her, his tears soaking into her hair, but his eyes never left the two people standing across the room, Vanessa and Dr. Raymond Carter. Vanessa was the first to break. She dropped the mask of the loving wife and stepmother, her face contorting into rage. "You idiot!" she spat, her voice venomous. "Do you realize what you've done? She was supposed to stay under. That's the only way we could." She stopped, realizing too late what she'd revealed. Dr. Carter's jaw clenched. He stepped forward quickly, trying to cover. "Richard, don't listen to her. She's distraught. The child is unstable. She won't survive without the machines. Plug her back in before it's too late." His hand darted toward the floor equipment. But before he could touch anything, Noah jumped between Carter and the bed, his small arms spread wide like a shield. "Don't you dare!" His voice cracked with both fear and defiance. "You're not taking her away again!" Richard rose from his knees, still holding Emily's hand. The tears were gone, what replaced them was fire. His towering figure loomed over Carter, his voice sharp as a blade. "Step away from my daughter. Now." For a moment, Carter hesitated, then sneered. "You're delirious, Richard. Without me, she'll die. Without those machines, she'll die. I'm the only thing standing between her and death." Richard's laugh was raw, bitter, and full of fury. "No, Ray. You're the one who's been pushing her closer to death every day." He turned toward the guards, who still stood at the door, dumbstruck. His voice thundered with authority. "Arrest them both. Right now." The guards exchanged uncertain glances, and used to turning against the hospital's own doctor. But then Emily coughed weakly, her small voice rasping. "Daddy. Noah, they hurt me." That was enough. The guards moved. Vanessa shrieked, backing toward the wall, her designer heels slipping on the glass shards. "No! You can't do this! I am his wife! He'll never believe you! Richard, tell them! Tell them I'm innocent!" But Richard's face was carved from stone. "You're no wife of mine. You're a viper. You poisoned my child, and you thought I wouldn't see it. But I see everything now." Carter tried to fight. He swung an arm at the nearest guard, snarling like a cornered animal, but two men grabbed him, pinning his arms back. Vanessa clawed and screamed as the other guard snapped handcuffs around her wrists. Her voice echoed through the halls. "You'll regret this, Richard! You'll lose everything without me." Richard's reply was low but thunderous. "I already lost everything the day I let you into my home." When the police arrived minutes later, the truth came pouring out. Noah told them everything he had overheard, the late-night meetings, the whispered plan in the car, the forged medical charts. Nurses and staff began stepping forward, confessing their suspicions of Dr. Carter's unusual treatments. Within hours, both Vanessa and Carter were taken into custody, faces pale and furious, their empire of lies collapsing around them. Richard remained in the room, clutching Emily's hand, his other arm wrapped protectively around Noah, who stood trembling but unyielding. The billionaire looked down at the ragged boy who had risked everything, his freedom, his life, to save a girl who had once shared a plate of food and a laugh with him. Richard's throat tightened as he whispered, "I don't know how to thank you. Noah looked up, his eyes shining with exhaustion. You don't have to thank me. She's my friend. Friends don't let each other die. Richard's tears returned, but this time they were tears of relief, not despair. He pulled Noah into his arms, holding him as tightly as he held Emily. You're family now. Both of you. And I will never let you be alone again. Weeks later, Emily's strength slowly returned. Without the poisons Carter had fed her, her cheeks regained color, her laughter filled the Wallace estate once more. Doctors, real doctors, confirmed her recovery was miraculous, but Emily always said softly, "It wasn't medicine. It was Noah." The boy who had once slept on sidewalks now had a bed beside a window overlooking the green lawn he used to sneak across. He and Emily played ball there every afternoon, their laughter echoing against the walls of the mansion. And Richard? He often stood at the window, hands in his pockets, heart heavy with gratitude. He had nearly lost everything, his daughter, his soul, his reason to live. But in the end, he gained something he never expected, a son born not of blood, but of courage and love. And whenever night fell and the city lights shimmered beyond the horizon, Richard Wallace would whisper to himself the words that had once come from the mouth of a ragged boy and saved his world. Trust the truth, even when it comes from the smallest voice. Autumn settled over New York like a golden quilt. The Wallace estate, once heavy with silence and grief, now pulsed with life again. The grand windows that had once reflected nothing but shadows now glowed with the warmth of laughter. Emily was no longer tethered to machines. Her cheeks carried the soft pink of health, her steps were slow but steady, and her eyes once again sparkled with the mischief of childhood. Each day she grew stronger, and each day Richard thanked God, fate, and the ragged boy who had brought her back. Noah was no longer the filthy street rat that security dragged through the halls. He was part of the Wallace household. At first he resisted. His hands twitched every time he sat at the long mahogany dining table, as if expecting to be chased away. The weight of a soft mattress felt foreign on his thin frame, and more than once Richard found him curled on the rug beside his bed, unable to trust that the comfort would last. But slowly, with Emily tugging his sleeve into board games and Richard's steady reassurance, Noah allowed himself to believe he belonged. Neighbors whispered about the billionaire who had adopted a homeless boy. Some called it charity, others called it madness. Richard ignored them all. To him, Noah wasn't a project or a gesture. He was the son he hadn't known he was waiting for. The scandal of Vanessa and Dr. Carter tore through headlines. Socialite wife and esteemed doctor charged in murder plot. The papers screamed. Courtrooms filled with reporters as evidence piled high, falsified medical records, bank accounts fattened by stolen shares, the damning testimony of nurses who finally dared to speak. Richard sat through every hearing, Emily and Noah often at his side. He listened to Carter's cold denials, to Vanessa's crocodile tears, and felt nothing but resolve. They had tried to steal his daughter's life, his fortune, his peace. They would pay. And they did, sentenced to decades behind bars, their names forever poisoned. When the verdict was read, Richard looked down at Noah. The boy squeezed his hand, eyes wide with relief. It's over now, Noah whispered. Richard shook his head softly. No. It's just beginning. Life began to bloom again. Emily returned to school slowly, her classmates greeting her with a mixture of awe and joy. She always told them the same thing when asked about her recovery. It wasn't the doctors. It was my best friend, Noah. Teachers raised eyebrows, but the children believed, because Emily believed with the unwavering certainty of someone who had walked through shadows and returned. Noah, meanwhile, learned what it meant to be wanted. Richard enrolled him in classes, bought him books, and listened with pride when he read aloud for the first time in years. Yet Richard never forced him to forget where he came from. The streets had carved resilience into Noah's bones, and Richard honored that strength, telling him often, "You didn't just save Emily, you saved me too." At night, when the house was quiet, Richard would sometimes pause at the doorway of the children's rooms. Emily slept curled around her favorite stuffed rabbit. Noah sprawled awkwardly, the soccer ball Emily had given him tucked under his arm. The sight made Richard's chest tighten with gratitude so fierce it almost hurt. One evening, as leaves skittered across the driveway, Richard gathered them both in the living room. The fire crackled, casting soft shadows across their faces. He looked from Emily's bright eyes to Noah's wary but hopeful expression. "There's something I want to say," Richard began, his voice rough with emotion. "Emily, you are my miracle. You gave me the strength to fight. And Noah," he paused, reaching for the boy's shoulder, "you gave me back my daughter. You risked everything with nothing to gain, and you proved what love really means. I can never repay you for that. But I want you to know this, you are my son now. Not in name only, but in every way that matters." Emily clapped her hands with delight, leaning into Noah. "See? I told you you're my brother!" Tears welled in Noah's eyes. He tried to speak but only managed to choke. "Thank you?" For the first time in his life, he felt safe enough to cry. Richard pulled them both close, his arms wrapping around the fragile, unbreakable circle they had become. "From this day forward," he whispered, "we face everything together." And so the mansion that had once been hollow with grief was filled with something far more valuable than money or power: family. A billionaire who thought he had lost everything found salvation in the smallest voice, the frailest hand, and the courage of a boy no one had ever believed in. Whenever Richard walked past the carousel in Bryant Park with Emily and Noah laughing beside him, he would pause at the rabbit with the chipped ear. He would smile through tears, because it reminded him that miracles don't come from machines or riches. They come from faith, friendship, and the courage to trust, even when the truth arrives in rags.